Alright everybody, it's time for another episode of I'm Better, where I take on all your hot take, unpopular questions, to difficult opinions about Violet Evergarden. Yeah, there's already other people doing this, but you know what? I'm Space Dandy. By making anime more accessible to wider audiences by removal of otaku pandering and racy content that hurts sensibilities of average Joe will only result in whole anime medium becoming even more boring and unwatchable. That's asinine. Like, it doesn't affect the whole of anime for some shows to try to be more broadly accessible. Like, I think that the biggest mistake people make in this conversation is acting like it has to be one way or the other. Not everything is made for everybody, but some things should be made for everybody. And if you're trying to make a show whose whole purpose is to be broadly accessible, you should definitely be listening to what people care about, what their values are, you know, who you're trying to reach. Like, obviously, if your goal is get as many viewers as I can, then that's the way you need to tailor your content. But most anime isn't about that. Most of it is aimed at a niche who is going to be very hardcore, and those people just aren't going to want to watch or pay for those more broad shows. And like, we're in a situation right now where anime is splintering more and more. Fewer productions are going broad. Fewer productions are, you know, like, expecting to reach the highest number of people. More of them are expecting to reach an incredibly specific niche. So I think that really things are going in the opposite direction that you seem to think they are. If you are looking at mainstream anime and thinking that it's getting more toned down or something, why are you looking at mainstream anime? Death Note has the exact balance of wide appeal and weird stuff in it to make for the perfect introduction to anime. Agreed. How is this a hot take in any way? This is the least hot take I've ever heard. Durarara is greater than Baccano. You know, I would have really disagreed with this a long time ago, but I'm kind of inclined to agree now, because I think that Baccano is somewhat overrated for the fact that when you watch it for the first time and you see everything falling into place, it is extremely satisfying. Like, that first viewing, when you're not really sure what's going on and it feels like everything is, you can't tell like what's significant, what's not. You've got these really memorable scenes, you know, big action set pieces and violent moments, and like, the animation quality is pretty great for a lot of the time. But rewatching the show more recently, and I still like it a lot, but I realize that a lot of it is wasting time. There's a lot of times where the same event is portrayed from 4 different perspectives, and none of them is really adding anything to it. It's just kind of saying, hey, this is all happening at the same time, and it feels like it's a story that would be pretty easy to tell without having to go and make it so, you know, confused, like so convoluted, to involve so many people and have it told from so many different angles and switch perspectives all the time. And when you watch it already knowing what's going on and you can really parse out what's important and what isn't, you end up feeling like a lot less of it is important than you first realized. And also, I think that Baccano, it just comes from a weaker source material, where Ryogo Narita was, I think, less of a good writer when he was, you know, working on that story as opposed to Durarara. And when you watch Durarara, even though it doesn't feel as tight and as, like, you know, complete as Baccano does as an anime series, at least, you know, the reason Baccano felt that way is that it was combining 4 books and having all of their resolutions happen at the same time, so it just felt like one contained story. But when you think about like what each of those 4 stories are and you break them apart in your mind, you realize that the Dallas story is totally boring and basically just there to fill time throughout the series. That, you know, the other incidents like just didn't need to be so convoluted. So then you go to Durarara, and even though it doesn't have that tightness because it's just linearly telling each book's story, more of it is important, more of the characters are interesting, it has more interesting themes behind it as opposed to just chaos, which is the theme of Baccano. So yeah, I think that Durarara leaves a stronger impression. It gives you more to chew on, more to, you know, continue thinking about after watching it. And I also would say that while Baccano has really great animation moments, it is not held up as well as it did in my mind. And Durarara, you know, also is pretty fucking inconsistent, but just by virtue of having so many episodes as well, you really do become very endeared to these characters in this this world. So while I think that Durara's story becomes a total clusterfuck as it goes, it never stops being entertaining. So I can't say that I'd be as interested in seeing like more from the characters of Baccano as I was in seeing more from the characters of Durarara. I just think that they are better, more nuanced characters with more interesting stories. Despite how much everyone applauds Cowboy Bebop as a masterpiece, largely for the episodic stories, anytime a new episodic show turns up, which is genuinely great, everyone turns their noses up because there's not enough overarching plot, e.g. Blood Blockade Battlefront. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I think that people are really harsh on episodic series. Granted, I don't know if any of them have been as good as Bebop, just because Bebop is not so much respected for the individual stories as it is for just how fucking well made it is. That it really sticks with you and that it has such a unique visual aesthetic, such a unique soundtrack, and Blood Blockade Battlefront has some of those qualities as well, but it is a bit more of a clusterfuck, and it doesn't have as much of that immediate gripping quality that Cowboy Bebop has, and that very adult, somber feel that you don't get from a lot of anime. Kimi no Na wa is overrated and doesn't hold a candle to any Hayao Miyazaki film. Hard agree. I don't know if I can think of a Miyazaki I'd put below it. The School Days visual novel is one of the best ones I've played, and the anime subsequently is great, unironically. Just because a show makes you uncomfortable or angry doesn't make it bad. I'm inclined to agree. I did not watch all of School Days. I only saw the first 2 episodes right when it was first airing. I expected the ending because people who had read the visual novels were speculating that it would go that way. But I've read tons of interesting analysis and thoughts on School Days. I feel like it is fairly respected by certain critics. I think that it's obviously very contentious, but yeah, I don't think it's a bad show because of the characters being bad people. I think that is entirely what makes it interesting, and what it chose to explore is interesting. Whether the show is like truly great or not, it is definitely something that will get you thinking. As for the visual novel, it does have some of the hottest sex scenes that I've scoped the animations of online. While subbed VAs are better than dubbed VAs, they are pretty overhyped. Subs would sound much less impressive if they weren't hidden under a layer of abstraction for being foreign. I agree that they are overhyped. I don't agree that the layer of abstraction of being foreign has anything to do with it. I really think that I don't even think you really need to know that much Japanese, just enough that you are paying attention to the voices and not just reading the subtitles. Like, when I was new to anime, I literally did not hear the Japanese voices. I would just hear my own voice reading the English subtitles in my head. Once I got to a point where my comprehension was better and I could understand what they were saying to some extent, like, I can pick, it's very easy to pick out, like, the inflections and the performances. It's not difficult to tell the difference between a good and bad Japanese performance. It's why it can be really weird when you hear non-actors in something and it's obvious. You listen to it and you go, oh, they hired non-actors for this, or, oh, they hired this or that person. I do think that the Japanese voice acting industry has, I don't know if it's gotten more insular or if just the people who are popular are just given so much work because there is so much goddamn anime coming out, but I do increasingly find myself feeling like the same overhyped actors are just appearing in everything, and eventually I get fucking sick of hearing them. Like, I love Keiji Fujiwara and Miyuki Sawashiro and Kana Hanazawa, but at some point I don't hear their performances anymore. I just hear their voices. And it makes a huge difference when they are doing a great performance versus just being in a show. Like, I can think of roles from Hanakana, like in Kurage Hime or Psycho Pass, where I really like her vocal performance, but I can also think of countless shows where it's just, oh, Hanakana's in this just doing her voice, just speaking into a microphone and not, phoning it in. And a lot of the time that's because the script isn't really good, or maybe the directing wasn't good, or they just didn't care enough. Like, they're just hiring them for the name recognition. The same is true of Hollywood actors. You have plenty of people like a Samuel L. Jackson or something, where he's in fucking everything, and sometimes he's incredible, and sometimes he's just Sam Jackson. But, like, I think that Japanese voice acting has a lot of that, and yeah, it can definitely be overhyped. I think that certain actors are too beloved for just being in things as opposed to actually giving great performances. An anime having a deep meaning or some philosophical theme does not make it good or enjoyable. An anime where not much happens besides character development or not about huge, bigger themes most of the time are better anime than so-called deep ones. Yeah, I mean, I do think there are a lot of shows that I personally thought were boring and dropped, and then people will tell me no, the show is great, it's about this, and then they give me some huge analytical diatribe about the deeper meanings and themes of the show, and I'm like, I don't care, because these themes will be tackled by other work. There's not really a lot of themes that have never been explored before, like human existence and the amount of experiences we can have are pretty limited. You know, we all live in the same world, we all have similar bodies, similar needs and wants, and you're not gonna find a story that's just gonna invent some new angle of humanity that's never been explored before. There are good stories exploring any theme you can think of, and so to me, being able to explore a theme well is a huge bonus, and if I have a show that I really love and it also has really interesting deep themes, that's, doubly great. Evangelion, I can praise all day for its themes, but what really draws me to the show is the incredible visual directing and the incredibly well-written characters and just general well-structured script that, gives me a lot to chew on and a lot to think about. But it's not just because it explores psychology and philosophy and all this other shit. That is, if anything, the icing on the cake. But there are shows that just Ergo Proxy where I don't give a shit at all because the show is boring and a lot of the times bland and not that great looking and not that well written and just a convoluted mess, and the fact that it has a bunch of fucking references to philosophers and shit adds nothing to it for me. Pretty Cure is bar none easily some of Toei's best work, and nobody doesn't acknowledge it because it's a magical girl anime. Totally agreed. I think Precure is by far the best, consistent work that Toei does. It's kind of baffling even that it comes from Toei Studio when, they will revive nostalgia properties that are beloved and just do jack shit with them or make them look terrible, like Digimon Tri, Ugly as Sin, boring, fucking Dragon Ball Super is fine, but it had a really rough start where the animation was fucking just total dog shit. Sailor Moon Crystal was a similar story. They keep bringing back Saint Seiya and it's not interesting. But then, meanwhile, Precure is just trucking along year after year. It's always solidly entertaining. It always has, pretty consistent visuals, great Sakuga moments, and just endearing storylines. And it's just really almost strange that that engine is just perpetuating itself and doing fine and never seems to get... I mean, not every Precure season is created equal, but yeah, it definitely doesn't get enough attention, but I think that it's partly for being Magical Girl and being, aimed at children, but also it's partly because it's never had any real release, outside of Japan. The only way it comes out is by fan subbers, and a lot of people just don't even find out about it, or it just seems prohibitively fucking massive, because every season is 50 episodes, and there's 15 of them, and most people who get into Precure, they get into it and they try to go down the road of, I'm gonna watch all of Precure, but just go watch Heartcatch. If you're interested at all, here's some Sakuga from Heartcatch. If that looks like something you want to see, you should go watch Heartcatch Precure. Alright, that's it for this episode of Let's Argue. Follow me on Twitter if you want to, be a part of the next one. And also, if you want more Digibro content, there's an endless sea of it in the every video featuring Digibro playlist. Because I have a lot of channels that I appear on, and I do all kinds of shit. I'm constantly talking. I never shut my fucking mouth. My voice somehow doesn't go hoarse in spite of hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. Anyway, go watch all that shit. See you next time.